Good morning, everyone. I'm Daphne. Welcome to Brigit's Breakfast. Good morning, everyone. What you drinking today? I'm back on coffee. So, welcome to Brigit's Breakfast once again. How are you? What have you been up to this week? This week, basically, I've been shifting my energy from the cleansing into more active, productive. It's the energy that kind of corresponds with the wheel of the year turning. You know, we're heading toward Ostara, and so I'm getting myself organized that I can take advantage of that kind of impulse of energy that's coming. It's going to be a ways before we get there, so I'm still kind of in this cultivating stage, you know. My last cleansing ritual was to clean out my 9-year-old daughter's room. She had a bunch of stuff that needed to be thrown away. It was really satisfying to just get out the mess. I try to limit her screen time during the week, the school week, so her brain doesn't turn to mush. She's got tons of toys, but sometimes she can't even find the things she has because of the mess that she leaves. I went through all her books and I separated the books that no longer applied to her. And I actually, before I put anything in the donation pile, I did ask her, because she's still that in-between time of childhood where she kind of still holds on to some of her baby stuff. So I asked her, I showed her everything that I separated, and I said, do you want to give this one away or do you want to keep this one? And she says, well, one thing that was really sweet was that she said, oh, that book reminds me of my sister. That book reminds me of my big sister because she read that to me a lot of times, so I want to keep that one. So her big sister, my other daughter, who's 20, she is staying a year away, and so she misses her. So I understood completely why she wanted to keep that baby book. And that's how we should approach our own things too. You know, sometimes we want to throw things away because we just want to make more space, but sometimes there are some things that are worth keeping for whatever reason. And so it's good to do these kind of things with compassion. I'm gonna sage again right now. I'm kind of needed. There's some guys working on my house and they're making a lot of noise and it's really getting on my nerves. Coffee. Okay, let's move on. So I actually did a ritual this week that was for setting goals, and I used an affirmation in the ritual, which was you put in the phrase affirming that desire that you have has already happened. So, you know, you put your phrase, instead of saying, I want to, let's, for example, I didn't use this one, but I say, I want to lose weight. I'm going to say, I am a healthy weight. That's an affirmation. I am a healthy weight. And that brings, that among other energies, it brings the energy of the mindset. The mind gets focused on that thing being a reality, right? So you can imagine when you say, I am at a healthy weight, you imagine yourself at that healthy weight. If you put your affirmation in the present tense, you immediately think of that thing, that goal, even though you don't have that goal yet. And you can use that in your spells and your magic. I use a sigil as my method, and then on the piece of paper, I burned it and send it up into the universe with the flame. So, you know, this is a moment of new beginnings of, you know, cleaning out the clutter is one thing, but then there's got to be, now, why did I do that? To leave space for what, right? So I had to think about what is it that I really want? You know, what is it that I really, really want to accomplish? Accomplishments don't have to be great, big, giant changes. It could be a commitment to feel more joy and recognize more joy. That is a totally valid goal. Being joyful is something that it can umbrella over all of the aspects of your life: work, love, family, kids, you with your relationship with yourself. If joy is something that you have as a goal, and for example, you put in your spell, I am joyful, all the puzzle pieces can fit together and the universe can conspire for you to get that thing that you're asking for, to be joyful, to feel joyful every day. Not 100%, that's not human. but making joy be dominant in your life instead of uncomfortableness and sadness and stress. The way that I like to set goals magically is either by writing them down and burning them in a candle flame to send it up to the universe as a wish, or I like to write down the phrase and put it on my altar, and it stays there, and every time I see it, it reinforces that desire, and it reinforces that imagery that I'm going to have in my mind, what it looks like to have that goal. Sometimes we don't know what it looks like, but it's a feeling of satisfaction that'll come knowing that that thing has been accomplished. For example, I'm working on my master's. I don't know what it looks like to have a master's. I just know what it feels like to feel accomplished, like I finished it. You know, when I finished other things, I felt accomplished. When I finished all my work towards my master's, I know I'm going to feel that sense of accomplishment. So I may not have an image, but I have a feeling. And when I see a phrase that says, I have my master's degree, I can feel like it's already been happening. And then the universe can conspire to make it happen. Give me the determination, banish laziness, get me more organized, help me find a way that I can accomplish each and every assignment with passion and joy, which is the only way I seem to be able to do things recently. Speaking of putting a phrase on my altar, that brings us to our learning for today. Here we go. This Brigit's Breakfast is brought to you by the letter A for altar. Traditionally, an altar is used as the focus for a religious ritual and making offerings to a deity. Goddess-focused pagans use elaborately decorated raised platforms or tables or shelves as altars, certain objects specially arranged directly on the earth, or even nature itself as an altar. For example, an altar can consist of a figurine of the goddess and a candle. We set up specific temporary altars for elaborate rituals, like a full moon or a Sabbath. One traditional way to arrange a pagan altar is facing north, because it corresponds to the direction of the earth element, and the earth is our mother. So some of us who are goddess-focused start our rituals facing north. Here are some instruments and their correspondences for those who would like to set up a traditional pagan altar. This is not the only way to set one up, but this is one of the many ways. In the north, put a pentacle corresponding to the element of earth. In the east, use incense and your athame, corresponding to the element of air. In the south, use a wand and a candle, corresponding to the element of fire. In the west, place a goblet or chalice, corresponding to the element of water. Make sure you have liquid like water, juice, mead, or wine in your chalice. And goddess-focused pagans very often place a cauldron in the center of the altar, corresponding to the center of creation, the womb of the goddess, an instrument where we can use, for example, water to heal or fire to release or transform in our magic. Altars can be permanent or temporary, but the one common thing about witches' altars is that they are set up to help focus our energy on our purpose. Whether it be goddess devotion, celebration of changes in nature, or our prayers for change, otherwise known as magic. The letter A, altar. When I first became a pagan, my altar was as temporary as you can get. I actually performed my self-initiation ritual in an altar that I set up on top of a shoebox. And I was raised Catholic, so it was a great shift in focus and energy when I decided I was going to become a pagan. And so I performed that self-initiation ritual with my altar set up on a shoebox, because after I finished, I had to take all of the things that I put on top of the altar and put them inside the shoebox and put it all away. I did not want the people that I lived with to feel uncomfortable with the objects that I had on my altar. I felt so passionate and integrated by what I was doing that I didn't want to be judged. So I hid it for a while. Of course, that situation changed. I was able to make my own altars and set everything up the way I wanted to, have rituals in my home. When I joined a group, the group was came to my home, and I was the leader of a coven for a while. So at that time, it was the beginning of that leadership. So we ended up doing a lot of things at my house. It evolves. You can start with an altar on top of a shoebox. It's just as valid as any other elaborately set up altar that you can think of. What is important is that it is meaningful to you. For me, at that moment, it was very meaningful to me. We on the goddess path, we tend to look for meaning in things and try to find patterns and a deeper significance to certain things that go on in our lives that can teach us something or help us feel nurtured. And this is something that I would like to talk about. One thing that I came to feel over the weekend when I was watching the Super Bowl. First of all, since I come from South Jersey, I am a fan of Philadelphia sports. I was so psyched because the Eagles went to the Super Bowl this year. But I have not so much into sports that I am always watching. So I have to reveal that I'm a super poser. I went and I got ESPN just so we could watch the game. It was really an exciting game. So sad the Eagles lost though. Anyway, I came to a realization about something that's really important to me because of the Super Bowl. We usually, if we do watch sports, it's usually soccer here. So we have open channels here. Of course, I'm always rooting for a Philadelphia team. I don't actually sit and watch the games. I never liked to watch games on TV. I used to play baseball, I used to play soccer. I played a little bit of basketball, but I never got into watching teams on TV. The person who did that in my family was my dad. Growing up, there was always sports on TV. I never got into watching sports, so that for me really wasn't a big deal, but it was always there. So when we were setting up the ESPN for us to watch the Super Bowl, I was trying desperately to find a way to get the American commentators on the Super Bowl and not the Brazilian commentators. I wanted to hear the American voices talking about the game. It wasn't working. The pre-game stuff was all in Portuguese, so I was extremely confused. There is this button you can push that I figured out how to do it, but I was very confused beforehand, and it was making me freak out. I was like, why can't I just have the American voice? I don't want the Portuguese voices. And my husband was getting a little bit offended. For him, it doesn't matter what language the commentator is in. He would actually probably would have preferred the Portuguese. But I was trying to fix it before the game started. I couldn't settle down. I got, frustrated. And then it finally worked out and it was fine. We had fun. We watched it until midnight. Eagles lost. Boo-hoo. So I thought a little bit about what had happened. But a lot of people on the Goddess Path are encouraged to do introspection. Why? Because we are encouraged to learn our own natures, and our own natures that bring us closer to the goddess nature, and the goddess nature that helps us learn our own natures. Why? So we can live better. That's my goal, to live better. That's my goal, to be healthy, to live better, to be happy, and to do as much as I can in this life. So what was going on is I started to think about, why was I so upset about that? Or why was it so important for me to watch this game, first of all, and why was I upset before I was able to get the English on there? I realized that the sound of those commentators, I realized that they were kind of like the background soundtrack to my childhood. Any kind of spiritual path that encourages us to transform and change and become better, more ourselves, more authentic. We end up starting to look at what's actually there first so we can figure out what needs to change. So what we do is we look at our past, our childhoods, and see what we survived or how we lived or how things made us feel, our core beliefs, where they came from, because sometimes our core beliefs might have been a way that we were taught that our parents maybe thought that was the best way because that's what they learned, and then maybe that we're different, so we think that core belief doesn't work for me anymore and you need to change it. These kind of things unfold as we walk on a spiritual path that is a spiritual path about self-awareness. So we go through some things and realize, this is what happened when I was very young and my little brother was born. This is what happened when we moved from one house to another. And all of the feelings that our inner child kind of doesn't know how to deal with, it all kind of stayed in there. And we kind of discover what maybe causes us to think the way we do now, and what we'd like to transform or change. in order for us to live better. Doesn't mean that everything was wrong back then, but it can mean that some things were not adequate, or our little hearts didn't process it properly. You know, my little heart didn't process certain things that my mom or dad did. I did shuffle through a lot of reflections and memories of how I interpreted and felt and processed my childhood. And sometimes I felt out of place. Sometimes I felt like I didn't fit in with my family. Sometimes I felt like I caused problems that I didn't need to cause. And sometimes everything was okay. And I was reminded through the voices of those commentaries on the Super Bowl that there were lots of times in my childhood that were really, really okay. I remember being at home and having those games playing on the TV, and that meant that my dad was home. That meant that my mom was probably cooking something. And that meant that I was safe, and I felt safe. I did never have to worry about where's my dad, which I know a lot of people grew up with that sensation. My dad was around, and that was a good feeling. It was a great feeling to have to be able to count on that. On Sunday, my dad would be home watching the game, and we could be there. And he wanted to share it with us, and usually maybe my brothers would watch the game with him, and I was never interested then. But why am I interested now? And why does it make so much sense for me to want to hear the American voices? It's not because of the language, because I understand Portuguese completely. I wanted that feeling. I wanted that nurtured feeling of my childhood. I wanted to feel like I was at home watching the game with my dad. So why am I telling this story? I'm telling this story to encourage you all that choose a goddess path, and a path of self-reflection and authenticity, to pay attention. Pay attention when something really bothers you, and pay attention to the solution that happens when you find it. Because that can lead to a realization about your life that will guide you towards more joy, that'll guide you towards love, that'll guide you towards putting all the puzzle pieces in place. After I realized that I felt that about the voices of the commentators on the Super Bowl, I told my husband, and he was like, you got to tell your dad that. I would love to hear that from one of my kids. My dad and I text back and forth very often. I did send him a message about that, and he just said, well, look, it only took you 50 years to figure that out, right? I said, like, it made me feel really good. It made me realize how cool it was, how great it was to have you around all the time when you were watching the games. It took me 50 years to tell him how I felt, but I had felt that before. So I encourage you to pay attention to the little things. They can lead to big lessons, and they can lead to more love and more joy in your life. One of the ways that I bring more love and more joy in my life is through my profession, which is I'm a biodancer teacher. Biodanza is a kind of therapeutic dance that helps us with our self-esteem, with our self-worth, with our feeling connected. Our health and our well-being is improved with biodanza. After every biodanza session, you leave feeling better than you did when you walked in. So the card I'd like to pick today, remember last week was the mouse, and I had to really overcome some obstacles last week because I had flooding in my house. I had certain things that didn't go right, and I needed to be very smart in how to figure out what to do without freaking out. So the mouse did help me, and I'm going to take the mouse off my altar right now. I have these cards, which are called the Biodanza Tarot. Each card corresponds to different exercises that we do in Biodanza. Let's choose a card for this week. Choosing the top card. Oh, great. Chaos. Sometimes I just love oracles. Actually, chaos is extremely important and extremely necessary for change. So let's see what chaos is going to bring. This is a quote by Rolando Toro, who is the creator of Biodanza. The forces of the abyss are as seductive as the integrative forces. From a deliberate act of entry into chaos can emerge the initial explosive spark for a new cycle of evolution. The challenge of chaos can give a person the possibility of building a cosmos. This is the most excellent creative act. Chaos is something really good. Remember that I took this card for me, and if you're watching this right now, it could apply to you too. In the operational model of biodanza, chaos is the base where the principles of cosmic life on the threshold generate the initial conditions for the emergence of life. In the wheel of life, chaos and harmony succeed each other. Getting in touch with the disorganization of chaos is the starting point for anyone looking for the opposite state, forces in balance. Allowing yourself to let go of ego, mind control, and the constraints of rationality and surrender to the convulsive state is both frightening and rewarding. And here we go. There's an affirmation. Remember how I was talking about affirmations and putting that on your altar as part of your magic? The affirmation for this card is, I allow myself to be attracted by chaos and to come out of it in harmony to generate new life resources in me. This applies to my life completely right now. Like I said, I just came out of the state of purification, of reorganization and decluttering, and now we're moving into being more productive. However, there is a time where cultivation and regeneration and getting the nurturing in place for rebirth to happen, that's messy and that's chaos. That's messy when you are a person who likes things in order, so you know what to expect. It's very difficult to let go and let chaos reorganize everything for you so you can come out in harmony. So that is where I'm at. It takes brainstorming and it takes that impulse of strong energy in life. Imagine the amount of strength and power that needs to be put into a seed that is going to sprout. Good luck with that this week. I would love to hear in the comments if anybody has anything to say about that. So this card leads us to our power song for today. I had another one chosen, but this card made me change my mind. Today's power song is Crazy by Sigil. Let's start you off. Thank you for watching Brigit's Breakfast today. I'm Daphne. And remember, dance life today. Have a wonderful week.
That's why he goes there for, is to unlock the door.
Or shelves as altars. Let me start again. Can you hear that? People working on my house.